Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm not here today, but we're going to talk about fiscal policy today. And fiscal policy is very complex. It's very difficult to understand, but it does actually affect your life. And fiscal policy is when we are talking about the government taxing and spending, and revenue for the government are taxes. It measures taxes and spending, again, like I said, that Congress and the president put forth. If you were paying attention to the news, you would know that an historic tax bill went into effect January 1st. And remember, we were talking about the fact that the standard deduction has doubled. And so when we're talking about fiscal policy, we want to talk about how do taxing and spending affect economic output. So in other words, what businesses are producing. How does it affect economic growth? So is it encouraging growth or is it hindering growth? And overall business activity. Are they creating jobs? Are they producing more? Are we buying things? And more specifically, again, this can include taxes, whether we have higher taxes or lower taxes, whether we are getting stimulus checks from the government. So, back in the early 2000s, and then also during the Great Recession, the government felt like they needed to stimulate the economy very quickly. And so, one of the ways they did that was by sending each taxpayer a check for $300. And because we're Americans, what do we do when we get $300? We spend it. So, hopefully, that was going to spur on economic development, which it did to some extent. And then lastly, government spending on programs or infrastructure. So, for example, if the government decides that they need to spend some money to help the economy, they're going to increase spending on programs that put people back to work. For example, doing some road construction, creating jobs, making sure that our infrastructure is beefed up. They could also work on spending on things like free and reduced lunch or increasing the number of teachers in schools, in with salaries and with benefits, things like that. All right, so this is complicated, so stick with me. Contractionary fiscal policy. So if something contracts, it gets smaller. So contractionary fiscal policy is when the government is trying to slow down the growth of the economy. Because when the economy is growing too fast, we have a high rate of inflation and we have jobs that are created that are not sustainable, among other things. So, one of the ways that they can contract the economy is to increase taxes, because if you are paying more taxes, you have less money in your pocket as a business. And if you have less money in your pocket as a business, you know that supply is going to be decreasing, right? All right. Decreasing government spending. So they're going to cut back on those infrastructure projects and the other programs that they might be doing in a period when the economy needs to grow. And then also they're going to increase in government regulations, because government regulations typically cost businesses money. And if they are spending money on those regulations, they are not spending money on increasing the economy or jobs or growth or output. Remember, if you need to pause the video at any point in time, you can. All right, so the opposite of contractionary fiscal policy is expansionary fiscal policy. And what this is when we are not doing well, economically speaking, we're in a recession or a depression for that matter, the government wants to do what it can to get the economy moving again. So expansionary is when the economy is not doing well and they want to expand it. So I want you to think about what would expand the economy. Well, lower taxes would increase spending, because if we have more money in our pockets, as we have talked about before, we tend to spend that. Government stimulus checks, like I said before, and then also increased government spending on infrastructure, which again, I noted earlier. All right, so what you're going to do now is you're going to go to the Quizlet game on fiscal policy, and you're going to write down the words that you don't get right the first time. So if you're in the matching game, if you go to match two terms and they don't match, then you need to write those down so that we can get ready for our final exam, which, remember, is Thursday, January 25th. And then lastly, Ms. Conroy is going to start a Kahoot game once everybody is done with this video and done with the Quizlet game. And you're going to write down the terms that you got wrong. So again, we can be studying.